to the lanes of love to find victims of hate and violence and apply to them the healing balm and give them the hope and reassurance that all is not lost. Harsh is an eminent human rights and peace worker, writer, columnist, researcher, and teacher who works with the survivors of mass violence, hunger, homeless persons, and street children. A former IS officer, he is the chairperson of the Center of Equity Studies and founder of Karwan Mohabbat and Aman Biradri. He's a prolific writer with more than 25 titles, including Looking Away, Inequality, Prejudice, and Indifference in New India, Partitions of the Heart, Ash in the Belly, India's Unfinished Battle Against Hunger, and several more. Among his many awards are the FAU Human Rights Award 2022, Pandit Ishwar Chand Vidyasagar Gold Plaque 2020, the Ida Scudder Memorial Oration of CMC Vellore 2019. The Peace Research Institute Oslo has included him in its 2022 shortlist of people recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize, an honor he amply deserves. All are eager to hear Harsh, and I must not let him and you wait any longer. Over to Harsh.
Thank you, Hasan Saab, and thank you all of you who have gathered here. Thank you for your generous welcome. You talked about Gandhi living in me. I think he's living in so many of us, and that is the resurrection of Gandhi that we need. In fact, I believe that the world and India in particular, there's never been a time when we need to remember and live and learn from the life and struggles of Mahatma Gandhi than today. So I thought I would begin our discussion today by reading from one of my books. In fact, the book Looking Away. I had a section which I titled Learning from Mohandas, and I'll read some of this. And then maybe we could take our conversation ahead. This world today has much to learn from Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. Many young people born in free India have never discovered Mohandas. He towered over the 20th century with the epic leadership he provided to the non-violent struggle against colonial subjugation, but even more so for the intensely moral foundations of his politics. The world in the 21st century is vastly different from the one that preceded it. It witnesses the global triumph of market economics, the retreat of the state, the welfare state, and the generation of unprecedented wealth. It also sees a planet torn apart by staggering inequalities and by simmering conflict, often over religious identity within and between nations. Gandhiji's relevance is perhaps even greater in this century than to the ones in which he lived. There are many things that Mohandas lived for. What he died for was the secular democratic idea of India. The struggle for India's freedom was not just a battle against imperialism. It was also a battle, a contest about the kind of nation India would be when it was reborn into freedom. Central to Mohandas's imagination of India was of a nation of unparalleled diversity, in which it would not matter which god you worshipped, or if you chose to worship no god. It would not matter if you were a man, a woman, or any other. if you belong to this caste or that, if you were rich or destitute, or whether you spoke this language or lived in that region, you would be a fully equal human being and citizen, assured of equal rights and protection to pursue your beliefs and chosen way of life. What is important is not just that Mohandas had this dream for India, but that the majority of Indians, Hindu, Muslim, and of other faiths, rallied behind this ideal. Today in France and many parts of Europe, the ideals of secularism are currently being invoked to ban women from wearing veils in schools and public places. Elsewhere, Sikhs are being barred from wearing turbans. But the secularism that we learned from Mohandas Gandhi required the opposite, to defend the right of each person to follow their religious and cultural persuasions. I may and do oppose the veil, but must fight for your right to choose as well as my right to oppose. This Indian ideal of secularism is at variance even with hard atheism, which is intolerant of the faith of others. I may personally choose to reject faith, but equally, I must respect the choice of faith of others. This ideal was one for which Mohandas Gandhi was ultimately killed. But Free India has repeatedly failed him in so many ways. The blood of innocents is spilled relentlessly because of their religious or caste identity. Governments have been voted to power because they pull down a place of worship. Dalit children in between a third and half our rural schools are still seated separately. Temples are still barred to Dalits, and millions of women still carry human excreta on their heads for disposal. To battle for their vision of a more just world, many dispossessed but idealistic men and women today continue to pick up the gun. But Gandhiji reminded us that it is impossible to build a just and humane society by means which are unjust and inhuman. He taught us ways to resolutely fight injustice without hate or bloodshed, but instead with the limitless instruments of truth, love, self-restraint, self-restraint, voluntary self-suffering, courage, peaceful mass mobilization, and indeed, on occasion, recourse to law and the courts. These instruments of struggle need to be reclaimed and refurbished to be compatible with the challenges and possibilities of our times. Gandhiji also taught us the futility of revenge and anger. There is so little forgiveness in our public life today. Fasting for communal peace during the post-partition riots in Calcutta, Gandhi is said to have been confronted by a Hindu man nearly crazed by grief and hate because a Muslim mob had killed his young son. He responded. He had responded by battering uh, a young Muslim boy to death. Mohandas gently counseled him that if he really wished to overcome his suffering, he should find a Muslim boy, the age of his son, whose parents had been killed by Hindu mobs, and he should bring up the boy like his own, but in the faith of his parents. Contemporary notions of good governance envisage an ideal state to be one which at the best facilitates markets. Mohandas Gandhi instead offered us a talisman to be summoned in times of doubt and confusion. He counseled us to recall the face of the most disadvantaged person we know and to reflect on the implications of our decisions for that person's life, her well-being and Swaraj. Applied to state policy, this would mean that the quality of governance should be measured by what the state achieves for its most disadvantaged people. By this measure, if a state facilitates rapid economic growth and massive multiplication of wealth, but dispossesses our poorest of their livelihoods, of their lands and forests and jobs, the government has abjectly failed its people. Mohandas Gandhi also gave many lessons about how to lead a good life. He taught us to strive always to live and practice our beliefs, to be the change that we want to see in the world. If we believe in equality, can we try to be egalitarian in the ways we relate with people around us? If we believe in love, can we fight impulses of hate and revenge? He taught us to never lose touch with our immediate humanity, even while fighting lofty battles. In negotiations for India's freedom, he would take time off to tend to a goat kid's broken leg. He was not coldly rigid in his convictions. Although passionately vegetarian, when Badshah Khan's children visited him, he offered to arrange meat dishes for them. And he never lost his playful sense of mischief. When asked why he went to see the King of England in only a loincloth and a shawl, he famously responded that the monarch was wearing enough for both of them. Mohandas Gandhi by no means held a perfect vision or led a perfect life. Indeed, he was the first to acknowledge his faults and remained preoccupied throughout his life with fighting them. Most flawed for me and was his condoning of caste, even as he passionately opposed untouchability. His notions of trusteeship of big industry, for me, clouded ideas of class oppression and class struggle. And in his personal life, it is true that he failed as a father, leaving his eldest son tormented and broken. His beliefs in women's equality were imperfectly reflected in his loving but often domineering relationship with his wife, Kusturba. We learn from Mohandas Gandhi's triumphs, but also from his failures. We go back to him not because he was perfect. We go back to Mohandas Gandhi because, in his own words, he obeyed only one dictator, and that dictator was his conscience. Let me speak just a little more about why I believe India and the world needs him more than ever in the times that we are passing through. I think that, probably the most agonized, painful period of Mahatma Gandhi's life was also his finest. And these were the last months of his life before he was assassinated. Um, for young people, um, even I was not born at that time, but think of an India which, when we won our freedom, India had broken up into two countries. 1 million people, Hindus, Muslims, and Sikhs, were slaughtering each other in in a in a frenzy that showed no sign of ending. Um, something like 15 million people were rendered, had to leave forever the land of their birth. My own extended family was one of them. My parents were raised in Rawalpindi and had to leave that behind forever. In these times, the what did Gandhiji do? We remember, for instance, when there was a massive slaughter, primarily of Hindus in Noakhali. Gandhiji went to the home of each person who had been, who had suffered from this hate, and he shared. He tried to be with them to share their pain. And it is really inspired by him that so many decades later, when India began to be swept by a new epidemic of lynching, we started what I called Karwan Mohabbat, or a caravan of love. Gandhiji, in these months, when India actually accomplished freedom, and when the tricolor was being raised in Delhi, Gandhiji was not present. Instead, he was in Calcutta once again, trying, where slaughter was unending, and his effort was uh, to persuade people to give up violence and hate. Finally, he went on a fast, and people describe, what he accomplished during that fast um, in many ways. Um, they say that uh, homemakers, across Calcutta started saying, "How can we light the stove at our homes when Bapu uh, is not eating?" And slowly but surely, the violence began to ebb. Gandhiji had said he would not eat a morsel until the last hand that was raised against the other uh, would not be lowered. And then, like a miracle, finally, after 5 days, the violence in Calcutta came completely to an end. Lord Mountbatten famously said that, what my 55,000 armed soldiers could not accomplish in Punjab to quell the violence, one aging man with his frail body, but with the strength of his moral uh, conscience and authority, succeeded in doing, bringing the violence completely to an end. Um, the statesman used to have an editorial policy that they would always call him Mr. Gandhi. But after that fast, they changed their policy and said he was he would henceforward be called Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi had resolved that from here he would now travel to the west, to Pakistan, and and persuade uh, Punjab and Pakistan also to end their violence. But when he reached Delhi, he found Delhi in turmoil, and the tens and tens of thousands of refugees had gathered, and their anguish, their anger, their rage. Um, Anis Kidwai records meeting Gandhiji at this time. She said that her husband had been killed in, trying to save lives during the partition riots. Um, and without even completing her iddat, she rushed to Delhi and came to see Gandhiji and said, "My country needs me. What do I need to do?" And she recalls that he was in great sadness, and he said, "Beti, my life's work will not be complete." And please remember the words. He said, "My life's work will not be complete until a Muslim child cannot play without fear uh, in this city. My life's work will not be complete." And when we look at the India that we have built today, where Muslims are increasingly learning uh, tragically how to live with fear as a normal part of their lives, uh, we remember uh, we must be mindful of how far we have strayed from Gandhi's uh, uh, you know idea of what his life's work that remained. Um, I will also speak about the last fast that Gandhiji undertook just 2 weeks before he was assassinated. Actually, just before that, because uh, Mewat has seen horrific violence in recent months. Let me talk a little bit about Mewat and the Meo people first. Uh, there was a massive massacre of the Meo Muslims, and all of them were preparing to leave for Pakistan. And they recall on December 19th, 45, 46 days before his assassination, he went to Mewat and spent a night in a village called Ghasira. And indeed, when we started our Karwan Mohabbat, the people of Mewat said, you must come to the same village, Ghasira, and spend one night to remember Gandhiji. And in fact, they have folk songs even till today, which talk about Baba Gandhi coming and telling them that this country, it belongs to you, don't leave. And from then, they decided not to leave for Pakistan and to have faith in multi-faith, multi-religious India. Um, so his last fast, 2 weeks before he died, had three demands. The first of them is somewhat better known, which was that Pakistan should get its share of the exchequer, without which it would have become bankrupt. And Gandhiji said, even when brothers separate, they're still brothers, and they must get their fair share. But the other two demands are really important to remember today of his last fast. Refugees who had poured in from what was now Pakistan, living in refugee camps, were full of anger and rage and revenge. And one of the things that they had begun to do was to place idols, Hindu idols, in say the mosque at Connaught Place, in the Dargah at Mehroli in Delhi. And Gandhiji's second demand was that we must restore and return with full respect these places of worship to our Muslim brothers and sisters. And he said, in fact, he said, no true place of worship can be built around disrespect or desecration of another religion. And uh, and I'm quite sure, therefore, that he would have never, what is being built in Ayodhya today, he would never have regarded to be a true place of worship. And his last demand, and Irfan Habib, India's sort of greatest living historian, along with Ramala Thapar, talks about this. And he was alive, a young man of 19 at that time. And he says, how much solace Gandhiji's and strength Gandhiji's battles and words gave. His third demand was, the only way you could get a home in once you'd come as a refugee from Pakistan to India would be if a Muslim person vacated the home and left for Pakistan. And and there was so much violence still going on in Delhi that the refugee camps started swelling with Muslim populations preparing to go to Pakistan. And his third demand was that you go back, if you have got a home by, by a Muslim leaving, go and find that Muslim person in the relief camps, refugee camps, and tell them, this is your home. Come back. This is your country. And 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 I will go back to the refugee camp. And Irfan Habib says, just think of even making a demand of this kind, that mobs, Muslim mobs have have done huge amount of violence, and therefore you had to leave your home. You've come here and you finally got a home, and he's telling you to go and find the Muslim owner of that home and say with love and respect that this is your country, this is your home, and to go back yourself into a refugee camp. To have the moral uh, authority to make this demand. And people say that even Nehru and Maulana Azad and Sardar Patel told Gandhiji that, there's too much anger at this moment, too much hate. Don't make these demands. And this is not the time. And Gandhi said, this is the only time I must do this. And people tell us that on the first day, there were 10,000 people on the streets in support of Gandhiji's demands. By the fifth day, 100,000 people were on the streets of Delhi supporting Gandhiji's 3 demands. And all of those demands were accepted. The Hindu Mahasabha signed agreements to return the mosques and the dargahs. And 2 weeks later, Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated. He was assassinated. He lived for many ideas, but he died, and we must never remember, he never forget that he died for the idea of a country that was built on the foundation of love. And if we remember Gandhiji today, if we are truly trying to resurrect Gandhi in our times, don't let us look for one leader. Let us look for Gandhi in each of us. How do we respond to hate? How do we respond to leaders who are teaching us and normalizing hatred against people who we see are different in the God they worship, in the food they eat, in the language they speak, in the dress they wear, in the ways that they love, and in many other ways who they choose to love. And instead of hate and suspicion and resentment of people we see as different, our greatest tribute to him and his memory would be to treat them as sisters and brothers, to embrace them as your own. And because of the winds of hate that are sweeping country after country after country, and either leaders who are coming to power or those who are close to coming to power, from the United States to Brazil to France to Italy, even to Sweden and many other parts of the world. This is the time we need the example and the memory of Mahatma Gandhi more than we ever did. And let us resurrect Gandhi by our resolve that we will never allow hate and prejudice to overwhelm our capacities to love and to care and to share. Thank you. Mahatma Gandhi, Zindabad.
Thank you very much, Harsh, for your very nice talk. You brought home very, very well Gandhiji's passions and his principles, and how he lived for and died for them. Truly remarkable indeed, and something that fills every Indian with pride at the person Mahatma Gandhi was and the life he led. I'll take advantage of my moderator role and steal a bit of airtime to put to you 2 or 3 questions before we go to the questions in the chat box for a further discussion. So 2 questions I'll combine together. What are the hurdles and obstacles that you face in your work leading Karwan and Mohabbat and Aman Biradri? And how can your appeal be amplified and your impact multiplied so that many, many more people are moved by a mission and join in the very selfless, noble work that you are doing in the country today?
Hasan Saab, firstly, a word about Karwan Mohabbat. Uh, I made a resolve suddenly in 2017 because we were seeing, Pehlu Khan was lynched, Akhlaq was lynched, and lynching started becoming, Junaid was lynched. And lynching became, almost was looking like, you know, an increasingly normal part uh, of everyday life. Um, what has happened over the last 9 years is that hate and prejudice have become normalized, legitimized, and I would say even valorized. They're not just a normal and legitimate response, but actually you are heroic if you hate. You can only prove to the world that you love your country by hating other countries. You can only prove uh, that you love your religion by hating other religions. The lesson that Gandhiji taught us was actually quite the opposite. If we look back on our freedom struggle, the two people who um, were willing to give their lives, and one of them did give his life for the rights of people of other religions, Mahatma Gandhi and Maulana Azad, were deeply devout in their own faith. The two people who demanded and fought for, with the forefront of demanding and fought for a state based on religion. One of the Savarkar, the founder of the Hindu Mahasabha, was a self-proclaimed atheist, and Muhammad Ali Jinnah was not a practicing Muslim most of his life. And I think there's a lesson somewhere in this, that if you're truly a person of faith, you will never have hatred or disrespect for for people of other faiths. And and he also, the example that I spoke about Noah Kohli, etc. So I I was I was hugely disturbed by what I saw as a large societal silence. Um, you know, uh, when hate was rising and continues to rise today as a normal part of societal life. What should ordinary people do? And as Martin Luther King and many others said, Martin Luther King said, in the end, I will not remember the words of my enemies. I will remember the silences of my friends. So we had to break that silence. And secondly, Gandhiji had taught us that if you want to fight hate, if you fight hate with hate, hate will only get deepened. However dark, if you want to fight darkness in your house, you cannot fight it by also darkening your enemy's home, your adversary's home. Darkness will only deepen. Uh, the only way you can fight darkness is how if there's darkness and a huge storm and tempest by still lighting a candle. Uh, so it was this idea of fighting hate with love. And how would we do it? So I said that we made a promise to ourselves that we will go to the home of every person who has lost a loved one to hate violence. We would go not even as human rights workers or as fact finders. We would go like you would go to a loved one, to family, to friends. And we would say four things. First, uh, we want to assure you that you're not alone in your pain. We share your pain. We would sit and cry with them. The second is we seek forgiveness for what we have become as a people. The third is that we pledge that we will be with you, whatever happens, uh, as you try to rebuild your life, as you fight for justice. And fourthly, we will tell your story. It started off as one journey. I made a call, in my column in a newspaper and in social media, and many interesting different people volunteered. We made our first journey and we found it made so much of a difference that we did not stop. We resolved that we would continue to travel every month. And we continued right up to the COVID lockdown, and and now have restarted with full vigor, because hate has started mounting again and again. The difficulties you spoke about, there are huge practical difficulties now, because the Indian government is now charging me uh, with almost a fantastical range of crimes, which, if true, could keep me in prison for all of this life, and if I have another, then for that life as well. From investigating conspiracy for supporting terror and insurrection, hate mongering, um, yeah, so what are they called? Yeah, offshore money, and all kinds of extraordinary things. They obviously, everybody would know that they're false, but the process has been, where you're summoned, you're treated, in very humiliating ways. Uh, you lean upon the last of the people who are brave enough to support your work financially, and so the last of the foundations have stepped away. Um, you lean upon any institution that would invite you to speak. Uh, you lean upon every major newspaper where I would write op-eds. So every avenue seems to be shutting down. But my determination is that whatever you do, you will not silence my conscience, my public voice, and my work. And so we continue. Uh, for instance, there were at least 100 families who have been lynched in different parts of the country who we visited, and we made pledges to. And we were, extending pensions to the widows, helping the children through school, and helping fight some of their legal cases. And that's a pledge I'm unwilling to step back from. And so instead, I wrote to friends all over, and literally every month people send amounts, and we have been able to keep up the pensions, keep up the support to the families, because it's a promise that I made on behalf of our people. Where the state has failed you, the people should not. Uh, so in many ways, we are continuing. It's harder and harder, but and continuing our journeys as well. In recent months, I've been to Manipur, to Assam, to Nuh in Haryana, and to Uttarakhand. Each of these parts of India which are getting torn apart, and we're trying to do what we can do. And yeah, so it is difficult, but uh, no one is going to take away our right, my right, to stand up and defend what is finest in our constitution, and the promise that we, the people of India, made to we, the people of India.
I'll now take some questions from the question box, uh, and let me try to read them out. Um, One is this Lalita Trehan asking, I cannot understand why we are hearing controversies about Gandhiji's ideologies these days. Thanks.
Now, that's a wonderful question and a deeply, deeply worrying question for me. Let me tell you how extreme is the promotion of the opposite viewpoint. I have a good friend who actually spends a lot of his time conducting sort of workshops in elite schools, trying to talk about some of these issues to young people. And he said that for the first time, when he one of the things he would do is to show Attenborough's Gandhi film. And he said this last season, in school after school, at the point where they show Gandhiji's assassination, there was loud cheering and clapping by the students. Um, see, there's uh, if you go back to the writings of the RSS, and please remember that these writings were in the 1930s, contemporary to the rise of Nazi Germany and the Holocaust. And in these writings, actually, Hitler is praised as a great national leader, and his example is upheld. India is one of the few countries where Mein Kampf is actually not only freely available, it's one of the best-selling books in the country, available on railway stations, etc. So there is actually, these are two alternate role models, Gandhi and Hitler. And there is a great deal being done um, uh, to diminish Mahatma Gandhi. And when you look carefully at the ideology of the right, actually Gandhiji's emphasis on both kindness and morality are actually being interpreted as both feminine and signs of weakness. I'm proud to be feminine if these values are feminine. But I am completely convinced that there is no courage in the mob that gathers and lynches and beats to death an unarmed man. True courage is in the person who can jump into that crowd and try to save his life. So, but this redefining of what is courage, what is the 56-inch chest, what is this idea about loving by hating, which I spoke about earlier, is and we need. There's also, nobody can still openly be in power and actually say that we are opposed to Gandhiji. But what I find that the ruling establishment today has done is actually suddenly made Gandhiji primarily an icon of sanitation. And even the last 2 days, on your phone, the message that you get as soon as you pick up is, remember, pay tribute to Gandhiji by cleaning up your surrounding areas. That would be a true tribute to Mahatma Gandhi. Gandhiji sort of stood for many things. I'm sure he stood also for sanitation, but that was not what he truly lived and died for. And we are not talking about it. In fact, segments of textbooks which are being what is being excised out of textbooks is actually the circumstances in which Mahatma Gandhi was assassinated, for instance. So there is an attempt to erase what Gandhiji, of publicly, officially, there's an erasure of what Gandhiji truly stood for. And in non-official right-wing circles, there is a huge uh, actual demonization of Mahatma Gandhi, that he is really the cause of all our problems today. And many things, his defense for the equal rights of Muslims is at the heart of some of the opposition. Uh, people people recall, for instance, Gandhiji was said कि आप तो बहुत मुस्लिम परस्त हो गए हैं in his last months, and his reply was a lovely one. He said, हाँ मैं इंडिया में मुस्लिम परस्त हूँगा, फिर मैं पाकिस्तान जाऊँगा और वहाँ मैं हिंदू परस्त हो जाऊँगा. That you must stand with the minority that is being oppressed and so on. So these are things that he stood for. But also let us remember something else that Gandhiji was also attacked for a lot. And this was the Gita Press, and the irony that they gave the Gita Press the International Gandhi Award. I mean, nothing could be more shocking, because the Gita Press is actually the primary sort of multiplier of right-wing writings. But the history of the Gita Press tells us that at the point at which they had a very bitter separation from Gandhiji was actually when he started his anti-untouchability movement and called for the entry of Dalits into temples. I know, on the other hand, Ambedkar writes very rightly, and I share his that he did not go far enough and should have rejected caste, this caste system as a whole. But his opposition to untouchability was also something that the Hindu right never accepted. And so 100 years after the 98 years after the RSS was constituted, it's the same battle, it's reached a decisive phase. And Gandhiji represents actually the complete antithesis of everything that the RSS believes in. Hence, hence the campaign to discredit his legacy and his memory, and hence how important it is to have the kinds of conversations that we are having today, which is why, sitting in different corners of the world, I'm happy to sit and talk to you today.
There are several questions in the question box, more than we can handle in the 7 minutes that remain. So I'll have to be selective without offending those whose questions I cannot read out. There's a question from Sunita of Hindus for Human Rights. Thanking you for the deeply inspiring talk. She asks, can you please address the role of ordinary Hindu citizen of India in bringing the country back to a course of pluralism and unity?
See, I think people of every faith, in Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, practicing Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and so on, and those who are like me, agnostic, or those who are atheists, all of them have to come together and defend what brings us together as a country in India. India defended the right of each of us to follow our particular beliefs, and not just to follow it, but even to propagate it. But we also agree that we come together and accept the higher value of the Constitution. That if there is a conflict between what we see as our religious beliefs and convictions and constitutional morality, which is justice, liberty, equality, fraternity of all, then constitutional morality will prevail. Uh, that is the social contract that we, the people of India, gave to ourselves when we wrote our constitution. But for practicing Hindus, more specifically, Sunita, and I am in much admiration for the work that you do and the courage that your colleagues repeatedly display. I think we need to speak very loud and clear that Hindutva has very little to do with Hinduism. The Hindu faith, just as Islamism as a political ideology is very, very far from Islam as a religious creed. Uh, and we need to make the separation that all of this is nothing about being Hindu. In fact, much of what is being uh, um, proposed or demanded of you as Hindus is actually the very antithesis of what Hinduism actually stands for. And there's a line that I'd like to repeat, uh, and this is that there seems to be a battle around Ram, Lord Ram. The question that I would have is, which Ram are you speaking about? That Ram whose name was in Mahatma Gandhi's lips when Nathuram Godse assassinated him, because his last words were Hey Ram. That Ram, which was on Mahatma Gandhi's lips when Nathuram Godse assassinated him, or that Ram in whose name Nathuram Godse assassinated Mahatma Gandhi, both claim to be speaking about Ram. We have to stand up loud and tall and brave in saying this is what Ram really means for us. But I would also say something uh, a little difficult. I think each of us who practice our respective faiths also have to be mindful and willing to acknowledge the need for reform. And as a practicing Hindu, uh, the uh, the millennia of discrimination and violence against disadvantaged castes and against women, and indeed, is a legacy that we need to acknowledge. And also, so what is fine in the Hindu tradition is what we hold up, which is very different from what Hindutva tells us to do. But we also need, as practicing Hindus, I believe, to acknowledge uh, the need for, the injustices and the need for reform in each of our traditions, and every single of our traditions also have to respond to egalitarian progressive uh, changes. And so that's what I would say for the role of a believing, practicing Hindu in these times.
I'm afraid we don't have more time left for more questions. So I will thank you very much, Harsh, for the very enlightening talk that you gave us. And you always have a way to make us reflect on realities and our challenges and what we ought to be doing to further the cause of peace, nonviolence, justice that Gandhiji stood for. I will conclude with a wish and a quote. My wish is, and shared by so many around the globe, that you are awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, and it'll be a moment of joy, pride, celebration for everybody in India and abroad. The quotation that I wish to conclude with is from Mahatma Gandhi, who said, "Whenever I despair, I remember that the way of truth and love has always won. There may be tyrants and murderers, and for a time they may seem invincible, but in the end, they always fail. Think of it always. Satyamev Jayate, Jai Hind." And thank you, everybody who participated in this wonderful event today. With that, I take my leave. Bye.